Hello, everyone. Georgia Homstein from Daily Dose here. Welcome to your May Wellness blog. So normally this is in written format, but I wanted to spruce things up this month and do an interview, which was captured on video. So I'm going to be interviewing Luke Shover from UKG, and we are going to be talking about 5 things you didn't know you needed to know about wellness in the workplace. So with that, Luke, if you want to hop on screen here and introduce yourself to everyone.
Hey, good morning, Georgia. Very happy to be here. Like Georgia mentioned, my name is Luke. I'm on the sales team here for UKG. UKG, in a nutshell, is a full suite HRIS and payroll vendor, one of the world's largest privately held technology companies, and very excited to be speaking with you today in light of May's Mental Health Awareness Month about a very excellent list of questions that you may or may not have known about regarding your own wellness practices.
Yes. All right. So we're going to get into it. We're going to cover 5 different questions here. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, Luke, is how can technology, because you're a software company, support HR managers in integrating mental health resources into their existing wellness programs to enhance employee engagement?
Yeah, that's a great question, Georgia. I think that one, like first and foremost, technology is instrumental in tying, like how your employees access mental health resources into, like the wellness programs that have been built in place today. I think this role could look anything like supporting HR managers by providing these mental health resources via platform that are easily accessible to your employees. Think online portal, mobile web apps that actually offer mental health resources. Shameless plug for Daily Dose. I happen to know that they could also provide some support along this way. But
I'm like, what are these platforms?
Yeah, say more on that platform type. I think the best way I encourage my clients to think about this, is technology is your bookshelf. And whatever you put on your bookshelf is that what your employees will engage with. So if you treat your, in my line of work, if you treat your HRIS platform as nothing more than the place to go for payroll, benefits, and clocking in and out, your employees will engage with that technology like that. But if you build the infrastructure of your organization to not just create a single login where your employees can go to do the things they have to do their job, check their schedule, request PTO, look at their pay stub, et cetera, but also, utilize a technology like that to engage with them, check in with them to ultimately make sure that the employees have zero barrier to entry to providing you that feedback and are still, I think, protected in things like their anonymity if there's an opportunity for your organization to improve that you may not have discovered just yet.
Right. Yeah. And I imagine too, consistency has got to be part of that, where the more, because think about the apps on your phone, the more you use them, the more that becomes second nature. So I think trying to find a way to communicate what resources are in place and just keep reiterating that those tools are available and make them part of the daily usage. That's probably going to get you the most frequency of using them.
Right. The question,
advantage of the resources you have.
The question I would pose is, have you put your Duolingo hat on yet? Are your employees getting the notifications on that frequency to engage with your wellness program, et cetera? So, certainly. Well said.
So this kind of ties into the next question of how do we measure the effectiveness of wellness initiatives in reducing burnout, improving retention, all these things that we know that wellness programs can do. How do you feel like we actually can measure that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And anytime we talk about measuring any sort of KPI, the phrase I did not coin this term. I borrowed this from an excellent leader I worked for several years. But if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And I think that's kind of the question you have to take, back to your own internal teams, when you're having this discussion at your organization is like, why are we measuring this, What do we hope to get out of it? Because, if it's an HR team or wellness team at a company, has this idea and they want to pitch it, they have to pitch it 2 ways, 1 to the C-suite and 2 to the workforse. And those are two different very
practices. Different. Yeah, very different.
But I think, some KPIs that really come to mind when I think about what sort of measurement we can put around the effectiveness of an organization's wellness initiative is around things like your employee engagement scores, your absenteeism rates, your turnover rates, right? Time since last promotion, time since last, 4-star, 5-star performance evaluation, right? There are a variety of different mechanisms.
Healthcare claims, I imagine it's got to be up there.
Right. This is a great opportunity to collaborate with both in my line of work, a little slanted here, but collaborate with both your HRIS vendor and folks like your insurance brokers, right? Your insurance consultants, folks like Miss Georgia, right? Running the show at Daily Dose. Because I think that there are a plethora of stats that you can access or KPIs that you can access as an organization. Sometimes the hardest part is figuring out where those stats live, right? And what truth sources you can lean on to identify those stats accurately and effectively.
Yeah, I know if you're an HR manager, you're probably sitting there thinking, great, one more thing that's on my plate that I don't have time to do. But I would encourage you to lean on those third-party vendors. So, your benefits brokers, insurance companies, if they are willing to provide those stats, EAPs, I know some of them will provide those metrics. If you're working with someone like Daily Dose, we try to track, attendance rates, how people are feeling before and after programs. So don't feel like that has to all fall on you. Try to lean on your third-party vendors like UKG and whoever else you're working with to provide those stats. That's a big benefit of outsourcing something.
Yeah, right. You already pay these people to provide a service, make them provide, right? Like obligate them to provide. It would be
right.
Right. And then I also think there's, so you talk about absenteeism rates, you talk about engagement scores, turnover rates, right? Those are pretty concrete statistics. I think there's also something to be said for assessing things like perceived stress levels, right? Job satisfaction scores, right? It's kind of that more qualitative data that gives you a little more of the story behind the numbers. Because I think, with numbers, you can run that story however you'd like, right? You can create the numbers, you can read the numbers in a way that creates a story you want it to tell. But if you marry the quantitative and the qualitative, you can get a pretty holistic picture of what your wellness kind of initiative it looks like at your organization.
Right. And how would you get that qualitative information? Is that through surveying or just getting a feel just from the interaction with your employees?
Yeah, it could be I think the healthiest organizations, and I don't mean that in a health and wellness perspective, but the organizations that do this well are the organizations that are running a mix and match approach, right? So the lag metrics, when you think about things like exit interviews or exit surveys are of course radical, but I think, right, a lot of folks now, especially with the challenges around a shrinking talent pool, right, are being forced to be much more proactive, right? So what are we doing around stay interviews? What are we doing with the kind of, I know the water cooler talk has kind of gotten its own series of raps over the years, but right, there's something to be said for creating a safe space where your employees can speak their mind, right? Maybe not in a public forum, right? But office hours for HR is I think another very popular item on this list of practices that you can approach.
Yeah. Okay, great. So let's talk about best practices with the current landscape, because a lot of companies obviously have gone either remote or hybrid since the pandemic. So what would you say are some best practices, whether your employees are in person versus completely remote or somewhere in between?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one that every single one of my current and incoming clients is trying to figure out, right? Is like, how do I manage this with this, massive change to the American workforce practice that we've seen? And a lot of it comes down to consistency and communication, right? Are you delivering regular check-ins, be it on a Zoom call, right, or Teams call or what have you, or in that kind of right one-on-one in-person environment? If that works in your hybrid work environment or hybrid work model, awesome. Communication. By communication, I mean things like clear expectations, which is a very funny thing, but we're talking, oftentimes with our clients about how they can build trust in the workplace. And I think that is very much, right, a dovetailed concept in this particular discussion as well, because if you can start to set those clear expectations, right, and you can begin to deliver, right, frequent, right, not like high frequency, but frequent and consistent, perhaps, check-ins, that goes a long ways to do things like foster the community that's going to provide you with either a strong or weak company culture. You have to be very cognizant that both ends of those spectrum are available. And that kind of clear expectation setting and consistent messaging or consistent access that your workforce has to you encourages feedback, right? Much easier to give feedback to someone that you enjoy spending time with, you feel comfortable with, you trust in this discussion, right? So I think that's kind of how I'm approaching this with my clients, right? Is, hey, you've got a very either highly virtual, highly hybrid environment, and this could be true, right? If you're 100%, work from the office as well. But I do think that consistent communication, clear expectations, and access to resources that are pertinent to making sure your remote employees are healthy and well goes the distance to really create that community and encourage the feedback required to continue making your particular wellness initiative that much stronger.
Great. All right. What are some ways HR managers can ensure that wellness programs are inclusive and cater to the diverse needs of their workforce?
This is a good one. This was another one. This is another kind of, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it kind of question, right? Which I absolutely love. So I think, one of the things I was trying to prep Georgia in anticipation of this conversation is what are some, actionable takeaways that our audience can really pursue here. And so I tried to jot a couple down on this one, and it really comes down to, right, how you lay out the design, right? So are you conducting a needs assessment to figure out what needs to start, stop, and continue in your organization? Are you, taking what you learn in that needs assessment and understanding the big picture of just how diverse your workforce, is going to be? Even, right, if you're a small business, mid-market, enterprise level organization, you're not dealing with a one-man show in your workforce, right? So are you catering to the newest young guns out of college who just entered the workforce and, right, have the highest Snapchat score in the world, while also catering to the individual that's been with your organization for 25 years and is probably at a slightly different place in their both life and wellness journey, right? So just kind of making sure you're catering to the diversity of your workforce is pretty top of mind here. And of course, right, I'd be remiss if I didn't say it. Please be cognizant that a diverse workforce means that you're going to, right, have to exercise some cultural sensitivity around how your employees do or don't pursue wellness initiatives. And that's, right, you hired this individual because of how good they are at what they do. The onus does kind of fall to the internal, right, HR or wellness teams to make sure that the HR and wellness programs at that company cater to the workforce that they've staffed. Of course, right, things like flexible participation really, I think, play well into maintaining that sensitivity and adhering to the right diverse options that your workforce needs. And most importantly, right, you think about how I started this is like big picture. Do you understand what you need to do? The kind of closing, right, funnel, if you will, is have you created the right feedback loop or mechanism for your employees to articulate what they do or don't like, or what is or is not working for them in this particular wellness initiative or what have you.
Right. Yeah. And I think when we talk about diversity, a lot of times there's a lot of discussion around gender or nationality and race, but there's so many other factors, right? So you touched on, is this person new to the organization, or are they close to retirement? Because they're going to have a whole different set of values and behaviors. So I know that some companies are lucky enough to have wellness committees, and they'll pull people in from different tenures, different departments, right? You want different skill sets. There's so many different factors when we talk about diversity beyond just what we can see. And so really trying to think outside of just the obvious. And then, can you do things like form a wellness committee where you're getting input, or some sort of ongoing group where you can actually get that feedback from all those different types of groups.
Yeah, love that. Could not echo that particular sentiment loudly enough. I think making sure you are hearing from the people you're serving is the only way you're going to guarantee the program gets off to a successful start, right? Or if you're doing a little course correcting, right? That course correction is going to happen with feedback from the folks you're trying to serve.
Right. Yeah. And I think going back to psychological safety and the fact that people need to feel comfortable that they can voice that. And a lot of times, especially minorities or females in the workplace don't feel like they can speak up and say something to management. So what are you doing if you're an HR person? What are you doing to help senior leadership encourage that, there is that open door policy if someone is feeling a certain way? Or is there something you can put in place that is anonymous where someone doesn't have to come forward with their name? That way you are encouraging people to really bring it to the table, because a lot of people think they might get fired or they'll start getting different treatment. So really being sensitive to that and helping people feel comfortable expressing any concerns.
Yeah. Yep. It's been very interesting to see. So it mentioned this obviously, Georgia, but this is going on my 7th or 8th year in industry. And the number of times I've had to speak with folks about the anonymity offered in UKG's survey tools is through the roof, right? Because there is this very cognizant desire to collect that feedback, but very strong, mandate to make sure that those employees are treated equitably and equally throughout the duration of their tenure as an employee, regardless of what kind of feedback they give in that survey. So, it's a top of mind function for many HR leaders, I think.
Makes sense. All right, let's talk about innovation. This is our last question. So what innovations in wellness programming do you foresee becoming essential for HR managers this year into next?
Well, the layup here is AI, right? What kind of AI-powered wellness solutions are you leaning into, right? What kind of research are you doing to apply AI analysis to your wellness kind of data points, right? So we kind of talked about these a little bit earlier, right? But absenteeism, turnover rates, et cetera, claim rates, right, through your insurance carriers, things of that nature. The question I always pose is kind of, how are you utilizing AI to analyze that information and use that analysis to figure out what needs to happen next, right, to continue, moving forward. This one might be a little far-fetched for this year, but I think there's also a scenario where virtual reality becomes part of the health and wellness process, right? Like, I don't want to just go on a walk around the block at lunch. I want to put my VR goggles on and walk around the building, right, and experience something a little bit different in my day.
Oh my gosh, don't tell me that. I'm like, no, please, people, you need vitamin D. You need the sunshine.
You get some outdoor air in your life. Oh, right, fair.
I don't know if I'm equipped for all that for virtual reality.
I think it is going to be kind of. Oh, go ahead. You go.
No. Go ahead. I'll let you finish your virtual reality, and then I want to circle back to AI.
I think at the end of the day, the biggest mandate that wellness program is going to see, from HR leaders who are implementing these types of programs across their organization is, what kind of holistic approach are you taking, right? So I don't care if you're using all the latest and greatest technology, or if you still run your whole business on Excel, right? More power to you. God bless your pivot tables. But I think one way or another, figuring out how to take the big picture of your organization, what your employees are doing, and how their health and wellness journey is at an individual level is going to require a very holistic approach from HR managers. And I don't have every silver bullet for that, but man, I could get you some good tools to start that analysis.
Yeah. Because I think AI is something that's scary for a lot of people, and it's becoming that buzzword, right? I feel like this is what people used to do with social media. You need social media. It's like, okay, and in what way? What are we doing with it? Right. Does it make sense for everyone? So if you had to give someone advice that is maybe completely foreign to AI in as far as using that in a wellness program, what would be the first step that you would give them?
Wow, the first step I would recommend,
first thing to consider.
Identify the why.
Okay, so don't use AI just to use AI, but what do you need to do that you feel AI could assist you with?
Bingo. Yeah, my sophomore year, I had this written on the top of so many of my English papers in my sophomore year of high school. But Mr. Rango, super nice guy, who always write at the top of my first drafts, "Who cares?" and then circle it in big letters. And he didn't. Right? But I do think that is a good lesson to take away.
Yes.
Because we're going to bring something as that's such a change agent like AI to your organization. That's going to be another one of those kind of upline and downline sales pitches that you as an HR manager have to make. You have to convince, your C-suite to approve the expense, and you have to convince your workforce to engage in the technology or whatever the AI is going to be analyzing, so you can get accurate data points. And if you're just doing it to do it, it's going to be very expensive and very frustrating, right? I think the best recommendation I can give anyone, and this is advice I recommend to my clients who are proposing an HRIS or payroll change as well, is we really need to figure out why this is important. because just making the change to make the change isn't going to be a great service for anyone.
Yeah, that's a great response. All right. So there you have it. 5 things you didn't know you needed to know about wellness in the workplace. And now I just want to wrap up with a fun question, Luke. What is your favorite trendy wellness thing right now?
Oh, wow. I would have to say personally, although I don't own a cold tub, cold water exposure. I think that is like the most interesting.
I'm hearing a lot about this.
Right. I'm deep in my Andrew Huberman era, if you will.
Well, you could also do it in the shower. Like this.
Right. It's like, if you really believe in it, just don't turn the water to hot.
Right. Well, I know people, they're like, just take an ice cold shower. You don't need the ice bath or a membership to a place that does it, although you can just get it in other ways. Okay, very interesting.
Yeah. If I may, how about your favorite? Yeah.
Okay, I am very into human design. That's what I'm into right now. I just enrolled in this human design course, which if people don't know, the way I describe it, it's kind of like those personality trait tests, like Enneagram or those types of tests meets astrology. So, and it basically like you plug in your birthday and it tells you different things like the best environment you thrive in. Like, do you like more quiet spaces or busier spaces? What kind of nutrition does your body crave? How can you best make decisions? So there's so many facets to it that my mind just kind of explodes with it. But so I'm delving into the rabbit hole of human design.
You want to talk about a holistic approach? It seems like that is very
much. I'm writing an art. I just wrote an article on it that'll be in the April edition of CEW, which is Cosmetic Executive Women. That is a website that I write for. So anyway, if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share that article and some human design resources. And I'll also plug in your information for anyone that wants to get a hold of UKG and cold plunging, if you want to talk to Luke about that.
Keep me posted, I guess.
Yeah.
Georgia, if I may, I actually prepped a question for you as well, if that's okay.
Ooh, okay. Turn those tables.
What do you feel like the biggest misunderstanding about wellness is in today's environment?
Okay. I love this question because I actually wrote a book on it. And I feel like the biggest thing I think is a misunderstanding is people listen to something that they heard from one doctor or one person on social media, and they think it's a blanket thing that everyone should do. So whatever it is, whatever diet trend or fashion thing going on or workout thing. So let's say cold plunging. People are like, oh my gosh, you have to do this because this gives you all this energy and so forth. Well, I was listening to this podcast and it was all about women and hormones. I'm sure you'd love to know a lot about that. And it said that certain things like intermittent fasting, men could lose weight, but it actually could make women gain weight at a certain age. Same thing with cold plunging. They were saying that men require like a colder temperature, but that could actually be damaging for a woman at a certain age, and we need less to get the same effect. So different intricacies. And so I basically always try to tell in all the talks that I give is to do what feels right and personal to you. So if you hate running, don't sign up to run a marathon because you feel like you should, or you're getting pressure from other people, right? I had a friend that did a Spartan race and she's like, I hated it. I just did it because my siblings like wanted me to do it. I'm like, yeah, no. So do what fuels you, what makes you happy. I literally wrote a book on reframing things and kind of quieting the outside noise. So that's called You're Not Lazy. Change your words to change your worth if you want to research that and get some additional tips there. But yes, I hate the everyone doing something just because one person told them. I had a doctor once. He's an acupuncturist, to be precise. And he basically was saying that you should not wear sunscreen. And I was like, people's heads are going to explode if I start saying that. But anyway, I'm not telling people not to wear sunscreen, but it's good to challenge thinking. Sunscreen has a lot of toxins. So dig deeper, find out what works for you. That's my biggest thing. You've gotten me on a whole tangent now.
I love it. I love it. Excellent. Well, thank you for humoring me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for closing with that. I'm sure I've stirred up a lot of things now from our listeners. But if you want to reach out to myself or Luke, please do so. We'd love to continue the conversations. Luke, thank you for being our guest on our May Wellness blog here that we will distribute out. And thanks again. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Georgia. Have a good one.
All right. Bye, everyone.